How's it going out there? Today, thanks for joining us. We're doing a panel called "The State of VR and AR Gaming in 2022 and Beyond." We've got a great collection of VR and AR creators here from all over the United States who are building a lot of really exciting things and really exploring different things that are being done as it relates to the XR space. Starting off at the end of the table there, we have Nenea Reeves from Trip.
Hey.
We have Veronica Flint from Quixotic. And Ryan Engel from Golf Plus, a local hero here.
Yep.
Nenea, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Trip?
Trip is one of the I think we are the largest XR wellness consumer-focused product. We build experiences that are crafted to help you feel better and feel supported. We've launched specifically single-player experiences initially, and now we most recently acquired the Evolver community to be an expansion into being able to give and receive support in real time. And I like to think we're building the mindful metaverse, and I have lots of thoughts about what the metaverse should be and what it shouldn't be. And we have a really amazing opportunity as a technology community to build something different. If we can get off this hamster wheel of trying to replicate all the crappy things we've built in this world and kind of think a little differently about things.
Veronica, how about yourself? Tell us a little bit about Quixotic.
Quixotical. So I'm the founder and creative director of Quixotical. For years now, we've been developing a lot of immersive storytelling projects in VR, AR space. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of projects with Snap, Google, Verizon, 5G. Getting more into gaming in the XR world. So, yeah.
Veronica's badass.
And then Ryan?
Yep, so I'm the founder and CEO of Golf Plus. I managed to somehow lose my voice right before this talk, so I got that going for me. We're basically trying to build the golf version of the metaverse, or the metaverse version of golf. Our goal long term is we think that VR is going to be how we double the size of the entire sport. Golf is a super high friction activity. It's kind of elitist. It's great if you know how to do it, but it's really hard to do. It's really expensive. It's really time consuming. And what we found in VR is we can actually solve pretty much all of those problems and do it in a way that gets people excited about the sport so that eventually they do go play it in real life, which is kind of the ultimate goal.
And I'm Raymond Moscow. I've been in this space for a long time. I was a pre-Facebook Oculus employee, and I'm now working for developer relations for the Vive Studios, and very excited to kind of see how far we've come in VR and the exciting things that are coming. This past year, because of COVID and all that, a lot of people staying at home, a lot of people buying VR headsets and really exploring the possibilities. I think as strange as it sounds, COVID really accelerated VR adoption kind of across the landscape, And I think last year also really kind of signaled a lot of very interesting kind of moments for gaming in VR. We got Resident Evil 4 came, we got Myst, we got a Call of Duty game, like a lot of these AAA titles that a lot of these companies who were very questionable about wanting to dip their toe into the VR pool are now here. And, I think a lot of other companies are coming to explore that as well. What's everyone playing right now? I know personally, I'm a big D&D player, so I've been playing a lot of Demio, trying to kind of recreate this home campaign experience with my friends, all over the world. Ryan, I'm assuming you're golfing a lot in VR?
I am golfing a lot in VR. I also, I do like mini golf, so I like to play Walkabout, even though they're not really competitors because they're in the mini golf space, but we sort of occupy a similar space. I really like all the sports games. I love playing ping pong, so I like 11 table tennis a lot. I love the Forever games, Forever Bowling and Forever Darts. And then at our company, we're mostly remote. We've got some people in Austin and a few people elsewhere. So every Friday, the first Friday of the month, we have a VR game day towards the end of the day at
We do that too at Trip, yeah.
It's great. It's then we pick a different game every week and get all the team in there. We try to make it a multiplayer game to have fun. So we've done Demio, we've done bowling, and we're looking forward to kind of exploring some new games.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We just sent a team member off who's moving on, who was leaving the company and taking a break because he's having a child, and we like spent an hour, playing Population 1 together, just because it was an opportunity for us to play something together, even though we were all, we had people in Europe, we had people in the United States, but VR brings us all together, right?
Totally.
I've been playing a lot of more Demio. Recently, some Zenith, but I like Demio because it's tabletop and a trading card game, which is cool. So I like the mechanics in there. But yeah, that's like a recent one. Yeah.
I've been spending a lot more time in alt space right now, and I think what's fascinating is meeting a lot of the world builders in alt space and looking at the tools. I think out of all the open worlds, it's got one of the more robust tool sets to really enable the community. I think they've done it right when you think about like what the metaverse potential is, and even some of the Web3 worlds popping up. The maturity of what they've done in alt space is a really good reference model. And like I met this one woman in alt space, mother of 5, never worked in tech before. She's one of the top world builders in alt space, and she's making a living. Brands are hiring her now to build their worlds, and I think these are early indicators of the potential that we have as a development community to really kind of look at things a bit differently. And gaming will be accessed a lot through these entrances, and how do I access Golf Plus through that? How do I get to Trip? I think this whole sort of app download ecosystem we've been living with, when you have edge computing starting to percolate and what it will facilitate. I mean, you worked with the Gaikai team as well at Oculus, right? So, there's a lot of building blocks coming together that I think are really exciting. And so that's how I've been just investigating right now and collecting information.
Yeah. And I think building blocks is the right word, man. Like, I think of like what Minecraft did for people playing games. And now we look at things like Roblox, even something like Fortnite that has a creative mode. I feel like young gamers are learning that they have the agency to create the games they want
They're
now.
building the game as they play it.
Yeah,
and that's how we should be thinking about these new models, about instead of the brands or the publishers pushing their agendas down to the players, it's really, games will eventually look more like toolkits, and they get built out by the community itself. And I mean, look at also the impact that Minecraft has had on getting more females into STEM, because they're exposed to toolkits and even at the code level in some of these games. And I think it's really fascinating to me, very different from how gaming was when I first started.
Yeah, now, Veronica, I know you've been building things in the XR space for a very long time. Like, I know that, much like myself, you've touched pretty much every piece of hardware that's out there. Like, we are collectors of this hardware, but I mean, the separation for me and you is that you actually build things on these headsets. I just play things on them, right?
Yeah.
And so,
I haven't built on the Virtual Boy.
All right, not yet. I'm hoping. I was looking at something recently, and
So
someone released.
everybody knows what Virtual Boy
Virtual Boy
is, right?
I see some older faces in the crowd, so like.
Yeah, it's Nintendo.
Who knows? Virtual Boy Renaissance in 2023. Who knows? But Veronica, how has the landscape of developing for VR changed from, say, 2015? DK1 development kits all the way to kind of where we're at now. You've been building things on a lot of different platforms. Are these platforms learning from each other, or is there a lot of tell us a little more about that?
I think they are learning from each other, and like the headsets have evolved. They went from 3DOF to 6DOF, and I mean, a lot of it just gets started on just like learning what engines or software is available. Like I came from originally like a 3D animation, VFX, game dev, computer animation background before VR even happened, and so already having those skill sets in the core of just like game design and game development and building and 3D modeling was already like a helpful practice, and just extending into the head-mounted display realm or area. So But it is accessible now. You can dev on a Quest. You can dev on your smartphone. Yeah. So, there's resources is already out there for free. You can download Unity or Unreal and just, you watch any tutorial or documentation. But it is helpful when you have people or a community around to help. Like hackathons, game jams, is always helpful. Or finding, even when you go to college or school, high school or whatever school you go to, finding community there and finding a team and collaborating and building something out of nothing is always good. So.
Yeah, I kind of hear universally the VR community is very welcoming. We are eager to help others continue on this path and build their dreams.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Ryan, you're kind of new to the VR space, but Golf Plus has really taken off. Tell me what it was like to kind of go from that 0 to 1 bit flip moment where you decided that you were going to build a VR golf app, and here we are.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I am kind of new to the latest wave of VR, but I started programming when I was 13. I initially did a lot of game dev, as kind of any teenager back then probably was doing, and it was super fun. And then, as a matter of fact, when I got my computer science degree at Virginia Tech, and they actually had a virtual reality lab at the time, and they had a cave set up. I don't know if anyone's heard of this, but it's basically like these. In this case, it was 4 walls, so the top's gone and the back's gone, and they rear project onto them, and you wear these active stereo glasses, so you're standing in this 10 by 10 room where you can actually walk around, you can see your hands, and you can see stuff in full 3D. So in 2007, I started VR development, but then I took a huge hiatus and started it back again in 2019 once the Quest came out. So obviously the tools have changed a lot. We use Unity. There's so many amazing resources out there to get started with Unity and to just go from kind of 0 to the point where you can make a prototype of your game or whatever the case may be. All the resources out there and the community in VR space, and just asking people what works, what doesn't work, what should we be doing? I'm running into performance issues. Why is this the case? And someone willing to hop in and take a look at your code has been pretty incredible. All that being said, I came from the mobile app dev side of things prior to this, and I will say VR is really hard to develop for. There are some great resources out there, but when it comes to actually testing your code, what happens in the editor versus what happens on device when you can see what's going on is night and day. And then the performance in the editor versus the performance on the device is night and day. So the first year that we did it, I was using my Mac computer because I had been kind of a Mac person for quite a while, and I couldn't use Oculus Link. So I would write my code. Took 20 minutes to build the app, get it on the headset, figure out something's not working, look at the debug logs, and be like, this is the worst iteration cycle ever. Finally switched over to PC and had Oculus Link so you could see what was happening on the headset and do the dev at the same time and debug at the same time. And it was literally a 10x improvement in just iteration.
By coding in the headset?
The ability to write your code and then just see what's happening in the headset.
We struggle with the same thing. And then also, I think Figma is the worst thing ever for VR and AR because, even in our own app, it makes me crazy. It just seems like little mobile windows floating in space. And I don't think anybody's really nailed the UX for spatial computing yet. We're still kind of thinking about, little web pages floating in space or this is an area of evolution, I think, for us to think about how to use audio, cues, haptics, and also just attention, how to focus differently.
I agree. I think the biggest difference I saw, because I started doing mobile in 2008, right after the iPhone App Store came out.
Yeah.
And right away, Apple had the HIG, which is the human interface guidelines for how you should design UX and how UI works, and they had UI kit and their toolbox of
we need that for VR and AR.
We don't have that for VR. No one's built it for VR.
It's a challenge to all of you.
Yeah, so if someone can design the HIG for VR, you are a godsend.
I mean, I feel like a lot of folks have tried, right? But I think that there's just the speed at which both kind of the development paradigm as well as the hardware kind of, evolution is so fast that the moment you think you've committed to something, we're already on to something else. I remember in the early days playing VR with an Xbox controller.
Oh yeah,
And
for
now,
sure.
the
Now
first,
you can
the
use
first
your
five,
hands.
First five had real wand controllers, and
Yeah.
Yes.
now everyone has moved to kind of grip controllers. And I know even kind of further down the road, we're all looking towards how do you use your hands? How do you use controllers for specialty sort of interactions, but your universal sort of interaction is ideally
Yeah, and one of the
controller-based.
things I was talking about earlier is, why do our avatars have to have two hands? Why can't they have AI hands do multitasking? Why can't they have six hands and I can play digital instruments that can only be played with six hands, right? And it's almost like we can loop, create our own looping. We just have to think differently about it. You were there the first time I ever tried VR, that day down at the Oculus
Indeed,
office.
I gave you and your famous cousin their demo back in the day. Indeed.
Yeah,
How
that
far
was.
we have come.
So that day, we all drove down because Brendan invited us. I had the good fortune of being an early investor in Oculus because I worked with a lot of the founding team at a cloud gaming company. And Brendan invited us down to experience the Dream Deck demo, I think it was. And
Before it was called the Dream Deck demo, it was just like our experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And my late husband was there, and my cousin, and on the way home, I just kept thinking, I want to build in VR. That was the moment. And that's crazy. Now,
And the exciting thing today is now you have, I think
Yeah.
what you're doing with Trip is so exciting, like looking into the world of health and wellness and gamifying it.
Yeah, well, one of the things, I also want to be careful with gamification around health and wellness. I like to most people are doing what I call lamification. Do you know? Like, here's your mindfulness score, your resiliency number. And it's a constant, in mental health, it's a constant reinforcement that you're not good enough the way you are, right? It can actually make you feel worse. Most of the stuff I look at out there is like that. And our approach to gamification, we're looking more at how to give people a sense of contribution, that they're making a difference in the world around them. So that's how we're looking at the expansion into AR as this reward feedback loop. And when you look at communities online, like even EVE Online, the co-op mode, these kind of things are really exciting to me, to give people a sense of connection.
Thousands of people working together towards a common goal,
when
right?
you're depressed, you feel isolated, you feel disconnected. So if we can use these technology interfaces in ways that make you feel a deeper connection to yourself, or gratitude, for what you currently have and who you are, and then how you can share that and maybe help others and get a sense of feeling of contribution and a sense of purpose. These are the things that can shift your state of beingness. And I found that day, what inspired me about why I wanted to work in VR was not the experience I saw. What I took away from that was the feeling that I had being in an alternate reality, and then how I felt when I emerged from it. And it was such a unique experience that maybe one might only have on certain plant medicines, or, and, but I sat there and I went, wow, this is interesting. And then looked online at all the research that people like Skip Rizzo and Walter Greenleaf and others have been doing on using virtual reality to help people in healthcare. And that was really exciting to me because, and this is why thinking about just simulating reality digitally is not what I'm interested in at all. How do we give people experiences they can't have in this reality? How can we use these technologies to enhance our human experience as opposed to, try to enable more consumerism?
And I think that's kind of the interesting thing about kind of the landscape of VR gaming in general, is that it's really hard to make a decision on your kind of preferences on VR by just playing a single game. I think that's one of the exciting things that we've done at Vive, is by kind of launching Viveport and creating this subscription service. We allow you to kind of play whatever you want, you know? And I think that's really important, especially people early on in the VR space, to play a lot of everything, but also to play a degree of content that is selected. That's, you know, like I remember the early days where you would, you know, get a new demo, you try it, you get sick, you're like, okay, you know, Roller Coaster Simulator is not a great VR application, you know, especially in 2014, you know, and so like I think it's great to be able to have, you know, services like what we're doing with Viveport, with a lot of the experiences that you are cultivating within Trip, you know, that are assuring people that this is great content, these are experiences that you want to have, but go out and try them, right?
Yeah, and I think too, like early on, there was this thought that VR was only standing room scale experiences, no sitting, right? I mean, everybody knows gamers love to get off the couch and move around, right? But, you know, I think most VR companies were surprised at how fitness became one of the biggest drivers of consistent usage.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's a great segue. You know, part of this panel is about augmented reality, and you know, I think it's hard not to look at the impact of things like Pokemon Go and what Niantic is doing. You know, getting people up off the couch, out with their families, out in the world, catching Pokemon, or you know, fighting Voldemort. I mean, at least for a little while longer, I think, right? Nanea, you are working very closely with Niantic right now.
Yeah, we're very excited to be a launch partner on their Lightship platform. And so we are designing a mobile AR expansion of Trip. It'll be interoperable with our VR interfaces, but it can also stand alone if you don't have a VR device. And then the Snapdragon Spaces tethered device that Niantic is using, they're building it on the Qualcomm reference device. That'll give you an enhanced AR experience to the Trip, but it can also work on mobile AR as well. So what we're going to build is more like you can use the immersion of VR, any kind of mindful activity. You take care of yourself, and it transforms the way the world looks around you. And with Niantic, you will get into a co-op mode of transforming public spaces based on your self-care. So I'm really excited about it. We're going to launch in Q4, at least we're targeting that, and it will be interoperable with the Vive Flow, which is a device I love that device. I know that it got, you know, a lot of hardcore gamers were sort of like, you know, what's the point? But for me personally, it's comfortable for our use case. It's a great device.
Now, Veronica, around your neck, you know, we just mentioned Snap. Like, what are those cool glasses you've got there?
These are Snap's spectacles. These are the latest AR glasses. It does true AR. They're paired with the Snap app. They came out. They were announced May of last year at one of their conferences.
And you build experiences for them, right?
Yes.
What is that process like? Like, are people making games for these glasses?
Yes. I mean, right now, I mean, announced publicly, it's just been like the process of is you already have the software lens studio, which is already something that's compatible with mobile phones, and what's great about the spectacles is that you can just wirelessly like send the application to the hardware, whether it's a cell phone or the glasses. So you can just rapidly test out, prototype your experiences inside the actual glasses, which is pretty cool. And they also they kind of look cool. They're not bulky or anything like that. And you get true AR.
You don't look like a glass hole.
I don't look like, yeah. So like I can just like record a video too.
Shout out
it's
Google
in true
Glass.
3D. So like that. So you can record your memories and then play it back. And
you actually look like Morpheus in that.
Yeah.
That looks pretty cool.
So it only goes up to 10 seconds, but it's okay. It kind of, but when you try it, you can try. There's so many different ways. The great thing about Lens Studio is they are so advanced. You can do facial tracking. You can create a 3D model, and they can already do motion capture and facial tracking. You can there's so much. It's like a HoloLens basically.
That's incredible.
It does spatial mapping. Then it depends on what what hardware you're using, but or what software you're using. Sorry, but like, yeah, speech recognition, machine learning, computer vision, hand tracking. It does hand tracking pretty well. Yeah, it's pretty advanced already. So.
And then Nene, you touched on these, like this is the Vive Flow. I mean, it's not quite as it's a slightly different type of style. This is a Call Me Maverick, right, from Top Gun. Then you mentioned kind of the comfort of wearing these, and you kind of candidly told me previously about your struggle with VR headsets in general and the kind of comfort that you
I
experience
think a
with these.
lot of the early devices were not even really considering females with smaller heads or different ethnic groups that don't have defined nose bridges. And so I would see when we were testing a lot of our devices out, our app out in the enterprise industry, the women would sit there holding it like this, because it would keep slipping on their heads and the straps weren't adjustable in a way that could even fit them. And so I was really happy when the Flow came out because it was the first device that felt comfortable on my face. Also, you can lie down there. I mean, a lot of people ask, there's a couple of things we've seen with even the Oculus users. They wanted to lie down, so we had to enable recline mode, something I think that was never anticipated by the early development team. Being able to do it in the dark, in the way the tracking works and needs lights. So thinking about that, I think the Flow is much more flexible that way. And I wasn't surprised to see that you had a female lead designer on the form factor on the design team. So I think this is, not to pander to that narrative, but it is important to have diverse teams, not only building the hardware, but building the software as well. So you get very different points of view. It'll broaden our ability to reach more audiences as well.
Absolutely. It is important to be comfortable while having these experiences. And the shape of the headset is a factor that I think a lot of people don't consider. We spend a lot of time thinking about kind of a code perspective, make sure you're not like moving in parallax and not like having, sort of like strange rendering issues. But, the comfort of the headset itself, like early days having 5 pounds of weight kind of, resting on the front of your head is something you can't do for a long time. And I think we all aspire to being able to spend lots of time using virtual reality, and I think like the design choices like we've made with the Flow like really are bringing about that type of thing.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the impact in a couple of years with edge computing, being able to free up the device. So we'll have to figure out how do we get full immersion on these lightweight devices. But I think, when I started working in mobile gaming, I had a Motorola Razr, I had a Game Boy, I was carrying around like, Canon camera, an iPod, and I had all these different devices. It's the convergence into one was a few years out. I think that's how we're thinking about the future of AR and VR, that this discrete kind of, this is a VR device, that's an AR device, these are mobile apps. Eventually it'll all come together into one head-mounted display. And so how do you think of it more like, we think of it like reality layering, and with immersion being the deepest reality that you can drop into.
Absolutely, and then kind of with this talk of trying to spend more and more time in headsets, over COVID, a lot of us started finding really unique uses for virtual reality. Ryan, I understand a lot of business takes place on the virtual golf course these days.
Oh, yeah. Do you guys do betting? You should do blockchain betting in
thanks.
that. Like, that's how I play golf.
We have talked about that. Yeah, actually, it's been really cool because one of our first power users was my dad, who has never played video games before. I had to get the headset set up for him. He's like 67 years old. And to this day, almost a couple years after launch, he still plays every day, and I get to play with him, which is super cool. We've been in the process of fundraising, so thankfully the best way to explain the product is actually to just send somebody a quest, get them in there, get them in the game, and have a meeting with them on the golf course and say, like, this is why we're excited about this product, because we're playing a round of golf together. You're somewhere else in the world. I'm here. We can talk to each other. It's spatial audio, so I know where you're standing. You know where I'm standing. There's nobody else on the course except for us, so you don't have the time pressure of these other golfers, and you don't feel awkward if you hit a bad shot. You could just quickly take a mulligan. So yeah, it's been an amazing. I think there's a misunderstanding that VR is somehow antisocial. And what we found during COVID, if you have a good social experience that sort of promotes communication, it's one of the best ways to socialize with people that you're not sitting face to face with. It's definitely feels more of a social experience than like a Zoom call or things like that. So even as a team, we've been using like Horizon workrooms, and we've tried Engage and these other collaboration apps, and that's why we do the VR Friday thing as well. Is just like it gives us a sense of actually being together in a space, and I think that's going to be one of the superpowers of VR that some people
and
don't
from
appreciate.
a mental health standpoint too, like we've heard from the Evolver community, I've attended some of the sessions, that the abstraction of being an avatar, especially for men, to be able to open up and talk about things that they won't always feel comfortable in the real world in front of humans speaking about. This is a new use case that I think will emerge in a way that can have huge impact. And during the pandemic, it was interesting because, there was this funding sort of dry up in the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was like, we're not funding anything new. We're going to see what happens. And then all of a sudden, like all the VR companies who, VR has not been the darling of the venture capital community for a while. But it was like that commercial where the team launches their e-commerce website and they're going, we got our first order. And then the numbers start flipping and they go, oh my God, right? Like, how are we going to handle all this? That was something similar that I think all of us saw. There was a certain amount of growth happening in VR before the pandemic that really started to accelerate. And one, it has brought more support. Obviously, we were able to close more funding in last year, and I think more companies are seeing the support there. But really, VR was able to support gamers in a big way. And physical fitness, mental wellness, being able to connect with community in ways that didn't make you feel as isolated, distraction from the stress that, and then we've seen some advancements on using VR in healthcare, applied VR getting FDA clearance for pain management solutions. So it's really interesting. I think it's just the beginning of something super cool.
And I think that's a great segue into kind of, the what's next, right? Like Nene, you mentioned a bit about kind of being able to use edge computing to be able to kind of take the compute away from having to be on board either the phone or on board the device, and ideally having this data, pushed to the device directly. I know, I don't know if you're aware, at Mobile World Congress just I guess 2 weeks ago, we at CES we announced this, HTC announced this incredible piece of technology called the G-Ring, which is like a portable 5G network generator.
Yeah.
And at Mobile World Congress, we had this incredible demo where there were people in different devices, people sitting in front of kind of a traditional driving rig as well, controlling remote-controlled cars in this enormous track in the middle of our booth. And in those cars, there was a camera, and you were able to play the game with a live view from the camera, all the different cars, all running on this one network that was being created in 5G. And I think it really opens up a lot of really exciting possibilities of how can you start putting 5G into locations to do things like
and 5G into cars. I mean, we're going to be a Holoride app using the Vive
another
Flow.
Darling of South by, right?
And so we can help you chill out in traffic. And when you think eventually autonomous cars, et cetera, but at least we can support the passengers now, hopefully not the drivers just yet.
Yeah. Anyone in the audience get to try the Holoride demo? Very
it's cool.
Charlie, of course.
Well, one
Very
thing I want to talk about is the edge computing. How many people are developers in the room? Okay. Because when we worked at Gaikai, and this was in 2008, the edge computing principles are very similar to cloud gaming, which is the client itself, the app you build is mostly the input stream and optimizing for low latency round trips up to, you think more the app is up in the cloud and this lightweight device becomes, it's more like a two-way video stream without any buffering, and it has to be obviously really solid, and you have to do a lot of traffic shaping. So it's a different way to develop apps, and I think the earlier you can start experimenting with NVIDIA, Cloud XR, some of these solutions to start wrapping your head around it, the more I think competitive advantage you'll have on just even development, right? Thinking about mobile edge computing, because I think it's going to happen more quickly than we're anticipating. And that will allow us to stream very processor intensive experiences. Like, when I was at EA, the Gaikai team came in and showed Crisis, I think it was Crisis 2 or Crisis 3, streaming down to a $60 Android tablet.
Wow.
And you could play it. And I went, holy cow, I want to work at that company, right? Like that was, and so it's a different way to think about app development. And I'm excited about that and the impact when you think about what's next.
What else do you think we're missing from the kind of XR ecosystem equation? I'm a firm believer that hand tracking is the way of the future.
Body tracking.
But sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for, the next headset that can, because when I'm in VR chat and, you'll see your avatar's mouth moving based on the audio, or like some people are hardcore, they'll get vibe trackers and $5. So like, I'm excited for just like, it's kind of like the next layer of the whole inside out tetherless tracking, just like being able to like see, being able to capture the nuances of the face inside the headset. And also, we already have foot tracking working on the Snap Spectacle, so like you don't need to put like pucks on straps on everywhere,
Right.
which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with people in virtual spaces not having feet, unless it's
I
really
do.
relevant to the experience. Really?
I like my feet.
I guess
Especially if you're going to do dance and,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also think full color pass through is really important.
Yes.
Because you want to really get into this reality layering concept. And I think, what's going to drive adoption is not going to be like I want to play games on my head all day long. It's going to be, I always look at Apple's patents, and, they just got a patent for dynamic vision correction. So think about lenses that autofocus near and far, and that 70% of the world's population needs some kind of vision correction. Those are the key drivers that will get it on everyone's head. And then, of course, they're data enabled. And so, it's kind of thinking about that. What are the drivers? What got mobile phones in everybody's hand? Remember, no one wanted to play games on it. Everybody started buying mobile phones because of an emergency, right? There was one per household. It was mom would have it just in case, and the kids were grabbing it to play Snake, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for me, I think it's higher resolution. I think once the headsets have pretty close to retina resolution, which would be described as basically as good as you can see, then I think this device has the ability to be the best content consumption device in the world. So you can have IMAX in your house, in any room in your house, in your bathroom. You can be watching it with your friends who live anywhere else in the world. Eventually, I think live sports that are captured volumetrically are going to change things. And then this device becomes a must-have if you're watching a basketball game or a football game or a round of golf, and you can be on the court with the players and see LeBron up there dunking it in real time, and he's completely 3D volumetric. Everybody now has the best seats in the stadium, but you're there with your friends and you're celebrating and you hear everything that's happening. I think that's when it kind of goes from being this cool thing that people are playing with to like, that's how I'm going to watch sports for the rest of my life. And as soon as I try it once, I can't go back. It's like going from black and white TV to like color TV.
Absolutely. And then I guess the elephant in the room, a word that is all over South by this year, is the metaverse, right?
Yes. The M
We
word.
at HTC, we announced at Mobile World Congress that we are building our own metaverse called Viveverse. We're really excited to kind of, tell you more about that in the future. But we have, kind of placed our flag in the sand, saying that this is something that we recognize as important and that we are interested in exploring this with our community. Nenea, you mentioned earlier about your MMO multiverse.
Yeah,
of
we're going to
health.
put the meditation in MMO. That's going to be the next thing we're doing. But, the metaverse is plural. It's metaverses. And it's not going to be owned by one company, no matter what anybody says about that. And it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
going to be distributed. And so I think that is a really important aspect of it. My challenge to the community, and I've been really vocal about it, is, what I said earlier, we want to use this as an opportunity to build something better. And when, all I hear, if all we build are virtual malls, so our digital twins can buy digital sneakers, we might as well just admit that we suck and throw in the towel, right? Because and this is why I think the metaverse needs to be built by the citizens of the community, not brands. And we should think of, as technologists, we should think about building more tools to enable people to create and express and earn in new types of economies. And so I think we ignore Web3 at our peril. And while it may not be able to handle the concurrency that we currently need it to do, some of the earning disruption that can happen, I think, is very exciting. And that woman who is now earning a living in AltSpace building worlds it's an early indicator of the potential of what we can enable as a technology community.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think of, there were a lot of people making mobile games in Unity kind of before the VR revolution, but wanting to be a part of VR inspired so many people to go out and learn these tools. And I think that is just, the start, that story is so inspiring. And I think that it's just going to continue,
So there's a dystopian narrative that I think we really have to work against. And there's the tendency to want to turn it into a big shopping mall and focus on consumerism is something we need to push back on, right? We all want to make money because it enables more, but are there new ways that we can think about earning and making money that involve sharing economies? I like these play to earn mechanics are really interesting.
Yeah, indeed. And, I think it's also interesting because like all the kind of apps that we described, Trip, Golf Plus, like inevitably these can have their own sort of kind of social virtual metaverse like shards, right? Instead of downloading the Trip app, downloading the Golf Plus app, you can
will
go
see
to
that.
a virtual space that is Augusta, that is the meditation ground.
Yeah, I mean, like, why are we thinking about land in the metaverse as being scarce? It's like we're creating De Beers models in something that it's an infinite space, and we're doing manufactured scarcity.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? And so that's kind of the thing. We just gotta stop ourselves from doing that.
Yeah, the metaverse is infinite. The many metaverses are infinite, right?
Right. Let the brands have Web 2.
Well, fantastic. Well, I mean, I think why don't we shift this into a Q&A? Like there's folks out there who there's a microphone in the middle of the room. If you want to just queue up there, say your question into say your question into the mic because they are filming this. We want to hear the
We're
question.
going to say it together.
Please.
1, 2. He loves queuing because he's from England. I love that. Thanks. Thanks for the talk. It's really nice to see people IRL at my first conference in a while.
Yeah.
Yay! Just curious if you've seen anything particularly interesting in mobile XR recently.
Well,
AR Core, AR Kit kind of stuff.
I'm super psyched about Niantic's message of wanting to build a more positive, interactive overlay on the real world. I think that John Henke is a real visionary, and I'm really excited about what he's enabling with democratizing access to their platform. And I'm proud to be a launch partner on it. I'm excited about it.
I have a different answer. No, don't do mobile AR, don't do mobile VR, just get an Oculus Quest or Spectacles or something else because it's completely different. Interacting with a touchscreen isn't the same as interacting spatially.
I feel like mobile AR is a much more casual experience. You know, it's you're in the streets, you see a QR code, you're going to interact with it. Maybe it opens up an experience. Maybe it triggers something more kind of Web 2 related. You get a coupon or something like that. But I feel like it's going to be a much more casual sort of interaction with mobile VR. And the more dedicated sort of experience will always be moved to these headsets.
Yeah, I agree. The ergonomics of just holding a phone and just like it gets a little bit tiring after a while. And so I'm really hoping that once they become glasses, that would be like the key.
You need to speak in the mic.
Yeah, I think it would be just key if once AR or mobile XR just becomes wearables instead of strictly just holding a tablet or a phone because of the ergonomics, and it's just it can be pretty tiring just like to hold a device after a while. So
Fantastic. Next.
Right. It's been a absolutely fascinating panel. I'm very new to the AR VR space, and I've been trying to work out exactly all the incremental steps that's led to the next part of AR VR. I remember when Lawnmower Man came out 20 odd years ago. And I thought,
Yeah,
this
Brett
is
Leonard.
wicked.
We're having a big anniversary for it right now,
Yeah.
I think, right?
Yeah.
25
Yeah.
years, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. So I've been trying to work out, well, what are the little incremental steps? Because technology is like that. It's not one big wham. It's little small steps that in different people things happen. So it's coming so new to this space. I feel that the last big steps was the Quest 2 and some company called Facebook or something putting metaverse on the radar. So in your eyes, what's the next step for VR, AR? So it could be another cultural shift. There could be still a stigma that you foresee, or it could be a technology platform, or the way we build our technology, like got my good friend there, the developer mentioned that. Or is it just having a better content that pushes the general idea of VR can do so much more?
Yeah, I would say it's not gaming. I'm really grateful that gaming has got us to this point, and there's now a market where developers like myself can sustain our business. But in order for this to go mainstream and be the next computing platform, it has to be utility focused. It has to be something that people are using every day, and ideally for a long time of the day, so a much more comfortable device. It just has to be easier. Right now, it's still really high friction, even though the Quest was a big step forward. It just has to be a much simpler device that you don't even think about putting on.
Well, we're seeing similar patterns right now that were occurring in the early days of mobile before centralization or standardization on iOS and Android. So in the early days, there was a lot of friction. Not everybody had data-enabled phones. It was very similar, and you had to develop across multiple devices that didn't have standardized inputs even. And so we're still in that phase, but everybody's fighting for ownership of the head. And there's a lot of chaos, I think, that will occur. and the developers who can, or publishers who can figure out how to navigate within that climate will emerge as the leaders. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to disrupt and displace a lot of incumbents. And I think Web3 mechanics have the potential as well for that too, because you'll see different, the concept of a publisher or even app stores in that sense can be very much disrupted. In the same way that mobile content disrupted the music industry, right?
Yeah, I think that virtual identity is going to be one of the next big things. You know, like people are finding these technologies and they are realizing they can be anyone they want.
Anyone,
when they're
and
in
that's
these
the
virtual
benefit.
things.
Like,
and those interactions are bleeding out into the real world. You know, we look at, you know, I think of someone like Code I think of like a lot of the different kind of VTubers that are coming out and things like that. And people are building identities and personalities around these characters, these personas that they're creating, and it's all being powered by all these technologies that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are thinking wrong about it being a one-to-one mapping to you, because disposable identities have a place in this ecosystem, right?
Absolutely.
And for good and bad.
Yeah, inevitably, like an avatar, your personal avatar is going to be like an email address. Sooner or later,
It's
you're
like
just gonna
burner
have one.
avatars, right?
For you, I'm very interested in hearing about transferable skills in specific cases from mindfulness from the virtual world into the physical world. And then very interested to hear everybody's opinion on addiction from the virtual world back into the physical world. Indeed.
Well, you know, this is something that I think ethics are really important to, because we'll approach a lot of things with the best of intentions, and we can see some of the impact of not kind of thinking about long-term impact of even algorithms on ad models, right? And how it can be gamed to even shift political outcomes. And now we're on the verge of having stuff a little closer to the metal and even being more influential. So one of the things about immersion in VR, when you experience something, you are even retaining information differently than if you read it off a screen. That's why it's so effective in education and training. And I don't think we understand the long-term impact of how advertising in that kind of environment can even shift our own mental models and views. And we need to proceed with caution for that. Addiction, mechanics as well, like we all have some responsibility to make sure that we're looking for signs of that and then figure out what is our reaction to it. And again, like I'm trying to be conscientious and cautious about certain things that we do and how we test. But we do know that people experience our app in ways that translate to helping them in the real world. They've told us that. We haven't measured the impact of that yet. And so working with academic community and professionals on research is really important. And we're very actively involved in that right now. Yeah.
And now from an addiction perspective, do you mean people becoming addicted to VR? Or do you mean like people, because there's a lot of folks out there that are using VR to fight addiction, to
Well, I
get
have, yeah,
therapy
we're
and
involved in an NIH study for substance use disorder. And it really means a lot to me because I lost my sister to a drug overdose in 2012. And, you know, I know a lot of families are impacted by that. And the use case that we're using in the research is, one, we can target content specifically to someone in early recovery to help them. And if you have a triggered craving, what we're testing right now is if you go into a virtual environment that's more positive as a behavioral shift and not act on the cravings, more like a self-regulation tool. And then we're trying to, with this next phase of the study, see if we can have an impact on reducing relapse rates during that 6 weeks that somebody is out of treatment. because that's when they're the most vulnerable to relapse. But it's also with fentanyl in the mix, which is what my sister overdosed on. You know, you're very vulnerable, and so these are exciting arenas to experiment with how to use technology in a way to help people. And but you know, you have to collect a lot of evidence before you can make any claims therapeutically. And then of course you need to collect evidence over and over and over again. So yeah.
Cool. I think we have 5 minutes left. I think we can get through both of these. Please go ahead.
Hi, so I'm a UX designer and I previously worked at a AR VR company.
Yay, UX. Help us.
No, I was actually going to ask you for the help. I know how much of a struggle it is designing and, you know, finding the right tools. Like I absolutely love Sketch, but for VR, it is trash. It's not very helpful. The closest I found was an app called Shapes XR. Even then, it has quite a learning curve. So I was just wondering if you could speak about your design process, like how you're designing for your apps, and also what you'd like to see in the future to help like UX designers like myself to design VR AR apps.
Yeah. I mean, from what it seems is that from like apps that I've played, a lot of times the UI isn't fixed like regular normal mobile UI. They tend to be kind of like hidden in different spaces. So like sometimes you'd have to like have different cues, whether it's, and I'm maybe more talking specifically in VR, where you would have to look for something like whether it's like flipping your hand or using different hand gestures in order for different UI or buttons to appear. So yeah, because a lot of times UI if you're in the world or experience, they tend to hide it and put it somewhere that just fits within the world or setting of your avatar. So yeah, I mean, I think it's best to just take cues from other VR games and experiences and see how they do it, rather than just, you know, looking at traditional games or mobile. But yeah, it's like they usually call it like diegetic UI. So yeah.
I think what Ryan said too is really important, that getting out of the editor while you're developing and looking in the headset and kind of experiencing it. But you know, we struggle with this so much within our own team, like just getting people to think outside the box and think spatially. But also what's comfortable. You don't want to get whiplash trying to find the menu or the toolkit that you need. And so how do we also make it easy for people? And then accessibility, I think, is a big problem. So we found with using Gaze as a controller that it really made the experiences much more accessible to all kinds of people and in compromised health. And then there was a report, somebody had done some research and they analyzed VR's products, including ours, on how accessible it was for the hearing impaired. And, you know, I didn't realize that there were 17% of the world's population, you know, and we're completely ignoring them. And even using audio cues for UX, we need to ensure that we're being inclusive in ways that can reach more people. So it's definitely, I don't think I haven't seen anything that really nails it. I mean, I'm looking for it for sure. So if you can solve it, you will be very popular.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And then I would say, you know, learn Unity, at least in terms of getting a project set up and being able to pull shapes in there so you can just see what the size and the distance and these basic 3D principles in a way where you can kind of build. I feel like, you know, the current UX designers who have done a lot of mobile and web obviously use Figma and Sketch and these 2D tools, and they do a great job, and UX there has it's advanced in a lot of ways, but I feel like in many ways it's kind of solved and people know what to expect there. But in the VR space, it's so brand new that your best bet is learning the 3D tools, and it could be Blender as well as another great free 3D tool. Whatever you can do to get 3D content into a headset so that you can experience it for yourself. I haven't found any good substitutes for seeing what it actually looks like in front of your eyes.
Yeah, as far as tools, I haven't used Gravity Sketch, but I always, you know, it's usually Photoshop, Maya, Blender, even try Unity. Try seeing it in Unity.
Yeah, we
Get a
just
VR headset.
we started. We have a version now for clinical that's using eye tracking as the navigation element, as a precursor. Brain computing interfaces are going to change a lot of the navigation as well, and so eye tracking is kind of an interim solution to start experimenting with that. But it really helps in the clinical settings where the patient might be reclining and not have mobility access as well.
All right, let's see if we can get to the last one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
Hey
These
guys,
questions have been great.
so my question's about mindfulness. Ms. Reeves made a comment that suggested that the current mindfulness apps are not quite hitting the mark. So my two-part question is, what do you think the current mindfulness apps are getting wrong? And do you think that there is a mindfulness app out there in VR right now that is getting it right?
Trip is, for sure. I think I think what we have developed. So a lot of the when you think about VR meditation, the first thought people go, well, I'll put you on a beach and have a Celtic voice tell you to inhale. Why, right? And when we did that, the brain knows what a beach should feel like on your skin. It knows what it should smell like. And we kept going, why doesn't this feel good, when we created that very version of it, many years ago. And then we started to realize, let's give you an experience you can't have in this world. So instead of telling you to inhale, let's show your breath coming in and out of your mouth like stardust. And let's make you feel like you're floating up to a different dimension and, drifting off to sleep. These are the things you can do experientially in VR. We don't want to replace, I can go in my backyard without a 2-pound device on my head and have a very nice meditation practice. So you have to kind of go, what's native to VR? So our approach, what does a cosmic flotation tank feel like? I think what we're doing really, I think, and it's not to brag, I just think it's thinking about it like, what is native to this platform that you can experience calm, you can experience focus, as opposed to being told how to get there. It's a combination, it's not to replace. I have a very deep meditation practice. It's a Tibetan Dzogchen practice. You meditate with your eyes open. Trip's design was very much influenced by that as a starting point. But I think you'll see us do some really interesting next level stuff within that field too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for coming out and supporting us
Yeah,
this panel.
great.
Yeah, we'll be outside if you have any further questions.